So in this video, we are going to see a simple example for the normalization example. Normalization, how to perform this normalization upon uh, the entity which is given to you. So that is what we are going to see in this particular example. So okay, so just imagine that you're given with an order process in a computer hardware company, and what you have to do is that you need to convert this particular table, okay, this particular table from I mean, like, this is an unnormalized form into a 3 normal form. That means that it should satisfy the 1NF, it should satisfy 2NF, it should satisfy 3NF, so that there are no multi valued attributes, there are no partial dependencies, and there are no transitive dependencies in this particular table. So this is what you're going to do. So if you're given with such a particular table, so when you analyze this particular table, you could see that you have order number, date, customer number, name, address, contact number, item number, description, unit cost, and quantity, right? So these are all there. And can you identify any multi-valued attributes here? Yes, probably this one, right? Item number. That means that this 1001 is basically buying this item number X3412 and X21289, right? And this description is definitely another multi-valued attribute, unit cost, and quantity, right? And say if you look at this 1002, this order number, yeah, all these things are basically, so are items, which he basically bought, right? So these are all the multi-valued attributes. So so that means that 1001, if you look at item number, there are two item numbers, like this one and this one. So this is basically multi-valued attribute of this one, and this is the multi-valued attribute for this one, right? Now, so you understood that there are some multi-valued attributes. So the first step which you have to do is that, say when you get an unnormalized form, the first thing which you have to do is that just follow this simple way, so that you will get the complete normalized. So this is the steps which you have to follow. Say for your exam, or say if somebody is asking you, giving you a particular table, and they are asking you to convert your unnormalized form to a third normal form, what you have to do, the first one is that, say from the unnormalized form, you have to identify the entity. Okay, identify the entity. So what is the entity? Okay, order. Okay, order is the entity, right? Yes. Now you need to list down all the attributes. So which are the attributes here? You have order number, order date, customer number, name, address, everything. So all these things you are actually listing it down as the various attributes. Now you need to identify a key. So simply when you're looking at this particular table, it is very easy for us to identify that order number as our primary key, right? So this is the first step. So whenever you get a unnormalized form or a unnormalized table, the first thing is that identify the entity. Say just this is an all related to an order entity, so I'm giving it a name, and then I'm identifying all the attributes, then I'm identifying the key, right? So this is the first step. And now what you have to do is that, from the unnormalized form, the second step which you have to do is that identify the repeating data items. Okay, so when you look at the table, you know that these are the repeating items. So you have item number which is repeating, description which is repeating, unit cost which is repeating, and quantity which is repeating for this order number. Now when you look at the second order number, yes, item number, description, unit cost, quantity, these are the repeating ones. So item number, description, unit cost, and quantity are the repeating attributes in the whole set of attributes. So these are your whole set of attributes which you have identified in that item code, description, unit cost, and these are the 4 different attributes which are repeating, okay, or which have got multi-valued attributes, right? So these repeating items simply means that they have multi-valued attributes. So these are the repeating items. Now what you have to do, now you need to convert it into first normal form. Okay, so for converting it into first normal form, what you have to do is that you have to remove the repeating data items to form a new entity. That means you are going to take everything into a new entity, and you have to also take the key along with it. That means that you have to consider this order number. You have to take this order number. So we will apply that. So that means that you are putting this item code, description, unit cost, and quantity as a new entity, okay, and you're giving some name, okay, order item or something like that. So this is a name which is actually given to your new entity name, so you are also giving a name. And now what you have to do, you need to take the order number along with you. So when you relate these two tables, you should have some relation in between, right? So what will you do? You need to have this order number added in this particular in this particular table. So it is the foreign key, and for this particular table you can use this item code as the primary key of this table. When item code is the primary key of this particular table, right? So now we have this order number. This is different. This order is the one table, and the second table is order item, which you have identified. And you have this item code as the PK for this particular table, and this is basically the PFK, because yeah, so order number is basically part of the compound primary key, right? So that means that you need to consider, because you cannot take item code alone, or you cannot take order number alone. You need to take a combination of these two. So this is your composite entity, right? So you are actually taking the composite entity with this order number and the item code, okay? So this is nothing but your composite entity. So this is your first normal form. So in the first normal form, basically you have removed the multi-valued attribute. So when you look at here in your table, you cannot take one number alone. That is not possible. You need to take the combination of 1001 x3412 for understanding this particular column, and this one also 1001 x22189 with this related data. Okay, so you're taking the combination of order number and item number, right? So that is what we have basically done. So these two is a combination of this particular composite entity. Now so you will have this order table with all this particular data, and you will have this order item table, which is the composite entity, which has got all this particular data. Now can we find out any other problems? Say just imagine that there are what if someone orders exact same as the order 1001, like I'm ordering something exactly something like this. Okay, so what will be, there will be again some issues with the with the value. So what you have to do, so moving over to the second normal form. So in the second normal form, what you have to do is that you need to identify the composite. So this is your composite key now. So okay, that means a key which has got more than, so this is, so why the star is nothing but star just says that it is a foreign key also. This is a primary key to this combination of order number and item code are the primary key to this table, and in that combination of the primary key, this order number is basically a foreign key from another table. So that's the meaning of this particular star. So when you do it for your exams, it is better to follow the same format. Okay, now what you have to do is that then look for attributes which rely only on one key. Okay, so now when you look at it, now you are taking this description, unit cost, and quantity. So description is exactly of the description of a particular item, and unit cost is exactly that of a particular item, right? But what about quantity? Yes, quantity means, say I am buying so and so quantity. I mean, like, say if I'm going to buy a particular biscuit, okay, I'm going to buy this particular biscuit, and that biscuit is part of an order, okay? But if I say the description, it's a cashew biscuit, that cashew is that it's just this, the description of that particular biscuit alone, and the unit cost means it is basically part of this particular item alone. So here you could understand that this description and unit cost is dependent only on the item code in this combination of primary key, right? So that is nothing but your partial dependency. What is partial dependency? You have a composite key, okay, composite primary key. Your composite primary key is order number and item code, okay, and you are actually taking the non-key attributes. Non-key attributes here is description, unit cost, quantity. So you are taking this description and unit cost. Say description, when you consider description, it is dependent only on partial primary key, I mean like only on item code. Say unit cost, if you take, it is depending only on the partial primary key, that is item code. But when you take quantity, it is dependent on this, fully functionally dependent upon this composite primary key. Getting it? So there is some partial dependency. So if you have any partial dependency, what you have to do, So order number is part of the key, and item code is also part of your key, and description is dependent on the item code, unit code is dependent on the item code, and the quantity is basically dependent on both order number and this one, right? So now what you have to do is that you have to remove these attributes. I mean, like those which is actually related to the item code, you have to take those ones which has got the primary I mean like partial dependencies, and put it as a new entity. Okay, and take a copy of your attribute with you. So that means that you're actually putting this description and unit cost, and whichever key which it is related to, that key is also taken. Okay, so item code will become the primary key of this particular table, right now. And what is that? In order to make sure that these two tables are related, what you have to do, you need to put the item code in here as the foreign key. So again, it's like, this combination will they'll work out. So here when you look at it, this is order number is a foreign key, and item code is also a foreign key now. Okay, so now you have three different tables in the second normal form. The second normal form, you will have the order number and order table and your order item table. And so here you have got only this quantity. So the quantity is basically dependent on both order number and item code. And the ones which has got the partial dependencies, you are actually considering, you are putting it into a separate table, and you are taking the primary key, which is, I mean like these ones are dependent only on this primary key. So you're keeping this as the primary key here, and you are making sure that this both the tables are related by keeping this as the considering this as the foreign key to this table as well. And the combination of these two is basically the primary key of this particular table as well, right? So now you have actually eliminated the partial dependencies. So now there are no partial dependencies, and all good. Now in the third normal form, what you have to do is that you are examining all the entities so far, and in the third normal form, you need to basically make sure that in the non-key attributes, say when you consider order, you have this order date, customer number, customer name, address, contact number. So these all are the non-key attributes, right? So in this, these are the non-key attributes. In here, quantity is a non-key attribute. Here, description and unit cost are the non-key attributes. So when you look at this particular table, the non-key attributes, okay, if there are any non-key attributes which are dependent on other non-key attributes. So when you look at this particular set of attributes, customer number, customer name, address, contact number, this customer name is dependent on customer number, address is dependent on customer number, contact number is dependent on so there is a non-key dependency which comes in here. Okay, so there is a non-key dependency, or it is also called as a transitive dependency. So how it is a transitive dependency? Because order number and customer number is related. Okay, order number is related to this one. Okay, say if you could say that order number is related to the customer number in some way, right? And in the same way, the customer number is related to contact number or customer name. So this odd number is related to customer name. So like that. Okay, so there is a kind of a transitive dependency which can be identified in this particular relation, right? So all these things are the non-keys. So the non-keys are dependent on, say, customer name, address, and contact number is basically dependent on this customer number. So there is a non-key. If there are any non-key attributes, yes, these are the non-key attributes which are dependent on any other non-key attribute. So these three non-key attributes are dependent on this customer number. So there is a non-key dependency which is there, or a transitive dependency which is there. So what you have to do, so these are the ones which you have, right? So what you have to do is that you need to remove all these attributes into a new entity. So you're actually making another entity called customer. Okay, and you are removing the customer name, everything you're taking from there, and you're putting the customer number as the primary key, because all these three are dependent on this one. So you're actually keeping this, right? And now you have to have a relationship between these two tables, because you are actually taking it from there. So you are keeping this customer number as a foreign key in the order table, right? So now when you see this particular data model, right, it is in 2NF, and there are no it is in actually 2NF, it is in 2NF, and there are no non-key dependency. That means that this particular table is in 3NF now. So you have actually your order number with the customer number as a foreign key to this, and you have the customer table with the customer number as a primary key to this table, and you have this order item with these two as the foreign keys, and also this combination is basically the primary key to this particular table. and this item code, which is where the item code is the primary key to this particular table. So now you have actually removed all the dependencies. I mean, like, you have removed the multi-valued attributes, and then you have removed the partial dependencies and the non-key dependencies or the transitive dependencies. So now your table is basically in a, so basically you will get 1 2 3 4. You are actually dividing one table which is given to you, which is in the unnormalized form, into 4 different tables with different keys. So you are identifying all the keys and everything. So just to have a quick recap over to what we have actually seen here. So you'll be given with an unnormalized form of a table. Okay, so the first thing is that you need to identify all the multi-valued attributes. Okay, so in the first normal form, you are basically say you have actually identified the entity and you have entered all the attributes which are there, and you have identified the primary key, and then you are actually identifying all the repeating items. So you know, understood, these are the multi-valued attributes. You are putting it you're actually putting it into a separate table, and in order to have a combination between both of them, you are actually taking the primary key of this particular table as the FK. And for this particular table, you know, in order to have a proper identification, I mean, like, you know, if you want to identify like 1001, this one, so this order number and the item number has to be the primary key to this composite entity. So order number is a PF, FK, but for this particular new table, then you have to keep it as a PFK. So this combination will uniquely identify each and every attribute in this particular table, right? So this is what you have done. And now moving over to second normal form. So once you have all this data, now you need to identify for the partial dependencies. So how can you identify the partial dependencies? You will check. So this combination. So now you have this, order number and item code together as the primary key here. So now you will check whether description is dependent on both. No, description is dependent only on the item code. And the unit cost is it dependent on both of the primary keys? No, it is dependent only on the item code. Quantity, is it dependent on both? Yes, quantity is dependent on both of them. So but this description and unit cost is only partially dependent on one of the primary keys, so item code alone. So what you have to do, yes, you have identified some partial dependencies, so it is not in the second normal form. So what you have to do is that you have to take them out. Okay, so you're actually taking them out as a different description, and the unit cost is taken, and the item code, which is dependent upon whichever primary key it is dependent upon, that attribute is also taken and is given as the primary key to this particular table. And in order to have a combination between them, you're making sure that your item code is your foreign key also here, and this combination will act as the the primary key to this order item table as well, because quantity, for identifying the quantity, you need both information to be there in the table, right? And so now you understood that it is in the second normal form. Now you need to check whether is there any non-key dependencies or transitive dependencies. So for that, you will concentrate on the non-key attributes here. So here there is no non-key attribute issues, and here there is no, because this fully functionally dependent on this one. Quantity is fully functionally dependent on order number and item code, the combination of order number and item code. So there is no non-key issues here. Now you will look over to this particular table, order table. So here the order number is a primary key. Order date is fully functionally dependent on order number, but customer number is also functionally dependent on this. But what about this customer name, address, and contact number? These are not fully functionally dependent on customer number. It is more functionally dependent on the customer number rather than order number. So what you could do is that once you identified this, you can actually put them into separate tables. So you are making it as a separate table, and whichever is the primary key to this particular table, you're giving them as a primary key, because customer name is fully functionally dependent on customer number, address is fully functionally dependent on customer number, telephone number is fully functionally dependent on customer number. So now this table is intact, but in order to make sure there is a relationship between both of them, what you have to do is that you need to make sure that this customer number is acting as a foreign key to this order table, right? So these two tables are basically related. So for all the foreign keys, you will keep this star. Okay, whenever one particular attribute acts as a foreign key to the other table, okay, then you have to make sure that there is a star which is actually kept in there. So now when you look at this particular table, there are no multi-valued attributes, there are no partial dependencies, and there are no non-key attributes, non-key dependencies which are there in. So all these dependencies are actually removed by this issue. So now your table is in a complete normalized form till the third. So you have actually changed your table from an unnormalized form to a completely in the first normal form, then into a second normal form, and into a third normal form. So this is what we have actually seen. So when you look at the table, you will have the order. Okay, so you have the customer table. The customer can have 0 or more orders, right? But the order will be only related to one and only one customer. And then when you look at the order item, this is your composite entity basically, right? So when you look at the composite entity order item, right? So there is a 1:1 relationship between these two. And so this is how it is. So the foreign key is always at the many end of the relationships. Okay, so whenever you have many relationship or many to many relationship, there you will have this the foreign keys, right? So this is how it is. So now so this is how you will be asked to do a particular. So you'll be given with one particular table with unnormalized data. You will have to identify the multi-valued attributes. You have to remove it by using the first normal form. Then you need to identify all the partial dependencies, remove it in the second one. And then moving over to the third one, the transitive dependency or the non-key attributes, non-key dependencies, if you have any, you have to remove it at the third normal form. And finally you will get this you will get a neat diagram on a consistent database with the data where there is it is completely normalized. That means that there is no redundancy, there is no inconsistency, and the data in your database will be completely, the data integrity is basically maintained, right? So this is nothing but the normalization. So normalization is the process of splitting your table, unnormalized table, into various forms. You'll be splitting your table at each different normal forms. And why do you do that? Yes, you are doing it to eliminate redundancies, inconsistencies, and to maintain the data integrity of your table. So that's all about it, and hope you'll be able to take more examples and convert one unnormalized table into a complete table with one normal form, two normal form, and three normal form. Thank you so much. So go through it in detail and make sure that you are able to understand the data. If you have any issues or anything like that, you can always get back to me. Thank you so much. All the best.